Our next presentation is about ACEs, and we're really excited to have Jen to talk with us about prevention and the key. And I'm just going to get this up for you while you introduce yourself. Yeah, just touch the screen, or I can get a little clicker for you if you want. Thank you. There it is, it's up. Interesting. No, you touch the arrow. Maybe. Where is it? It's not cooperating with me. No, I just closed that.
I have technical support. It was working with it. Chris is down there trying.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yep. If you didn't get an ACE score questionnaire, raise your hand and she'll bring you one. Okay. I was hoping more of you would have left by now. I thought that was an option at the end of a conference, that there wouldn't be very many people here. I was worried this morning, but feel free to leave if you'd like to. I'm not going to be hurt. My name is Jennifer Liebert. I worked as an RN for several years, and I'm trying to kind of make a go of it as a new RN and finding my place. And I ended up working in a methadone clinic. And I worked there for several years, and it was my absolute favorite job as an RN. I really felt like I had something in common with the people that I helped, and I was able to make connections with them. And so I'm a big proponent of it. I had kind of I had nervous feelings about it when I went in thinking that I was going to addict them to a different substance, but I seen the difference that it made in their life, and that's kind of been the trajectory of my path. I went back and got my master's in nursing education and ended up working at Utah Tech and SUU, and really loving what I do in this space. But so thank you to everyone for allowing me to speak today and to give you some insights into a topic that is incredibly important to me. I know it's late in the conference, and attention spans are waning a little bit, but I promise to make this brief, and it's not a very long presentation, so hang in there with me if you can. And let's explore the adverse childhood experiences and how they relate to substance use disorder. But first of all, I want you to take time to take this test and learn what your ACE score is. And I'm going to give you maybe a minute to do it. It doesn't take very long. So then you just add up your points at the bottom. This is kind of it was kind of a personal journey for me. I mentioned that when I got into the clinic, I realized that, I know it sounds odd, but like these people that I was serving were really serving me too. And I learned so much about addiction, and addiction doesn't always really look the same for everybody. And I think mine looked a lot different, but the coping mechanism was the same, right? It's just a way that I found a different kind of addiction. It's just a way that I cope. And so I could really relate to how they were handling things. So everyone have their scores done? Doesn't take very long. Raise your hand if you feel up to it. Raise your hand if you were a 9. Yeah, okay. All right, an 8. Few more 8s out there. How about a 7s? Okay, 6. 6 or higher. Let's see, the 6 or higher. That's right, represent. Here we are. Okay, well, let's see how this relates to substance use disorder. Maybe if I can figure this out. Oh, here we go. I can do this. There we go. I think I went too far. There we go. Okay.
Let's see if it's still mad here.
Okay, here we go.
There it is.
A child's experiences early in life are important building blocks. Genes, nature, are like the blueprint. They provide the basic framework for brain development. However, genes do not design the brain completely. Environmental influences, nurture, fine-tune how the brain works by shaping which brain connections get used. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent, whereas ones that do not get much use fade away. Together, genes and the environment build the foundation for all future development. Safe, stable, and nurturing relationships early in life lead to healthy development. But children's brains capture other experiences as well. Stressful events. However, not all stress is bad. Positive stress involves normal childhood experiences, like starting daycare or meeting a new person for the first time. This stress is essential for healthy development because it helps children develop coping skills and confidence. But when stress is frequent, chronic, and uncontrolled, it is toxic to children, especially when they do not have a caregiver to provide support or buffer the stress. Adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, such as abuse, neglect, exposure to intimate partner violence, parental depression or addiction, and poverty are toxic stressors which could lead to lifelong changes in learning and behavior. ACEs early in development can impact social, emotional, and cognitive functioning, increased risk-taking behavior such as drinking and substance use, and increased risk of disease, disability, and social problems later in life. The question is, how do adverse childhood experiences impact a lifelong development? One of the most important systems in our body is our stress system. It's activated when we experience stress. We become alert, our heart rate increases, and so do our stress hormone levels, cortisol and adrenaline. Our body is ready to react, what is known as fight or flight. A short period of time after the stress is over, or if a child receives support from a caregiver, the stress response turns off and the body returns to a normal state. Adverse childhood experiences create stress responses that stay active, and without the support of a caregiver, the system has difficulty shutting off completely. This constant and prolonged activation can affect immune system functioning and increase the chances of sickness, infection, and disease. Prolonged activation of stress hormones is also toxic to the brain. Certain areas of the brain are more vulnerable to toxic stress, including the executive center, or the brain's control center, an area important for solving complex problems, attention, reasoning, impulsivity, inhibition, and learning. A second area is the emotional center, the brain's alarm system, which is involved in processing and interpreting emotions and the ability to control impulses. The third area is the memory and learning center, the brain's filing cabinet, which plays a major role in learning and the formation and retrieval of memories. Science shows that adverse childhood experiences impact all of these brain centers. Behaviorally, what we begin to see is emotional distress, poor emotion regulation, greater impulsivity, learning difficulties, and physical and mental health problems. More recently, science has begun to look at how ACEs cause changes in gene expression through a process called epigenetics, which helps us understand how nature and nurture interact. Epigenetics causes changes in the way genes work without changing the DNA code itself. This occurs through chemical changes influencing how the code is used. In other words, genes are like the hardware in a computer. They determine the boundaries of what is possible. However, we need an operating system to tell the hardware what to do. Epigenetics is like the operating system directing the function of a gene's DNA hardware. The genes we are born with are the genes that we have for life. But experiences like nutrition, exercise, smoking, stressors, and relationships all affect our biology. Adverse childhood experiences are associated with epigenetic changes related to stress, brain development, cognition, and systems associated with mental and physical health. Changes that happen early in brain development are more likely to be enduring and are possibly passed on to future generations as well. The good news is that positive, supportive relationships at any stage in life can make a difference. However, supporting families and children early on will help prevent many of these negative outcomes. One of the key ingredients for healthy development is having warm, loving, and actively engaged caregivers. This involves promoting serve and return interactions, where caregivers actively and warmly engage with the child, making eye contact, responding to sounds, words, gestures, emotional needs, and sharing experiences like reading and play. Providing programs that support caregivers to strengthen these abilities are the blocks that build healthy foundations for life.
Coming back. Let's see. Yeah, I might need your help. So in summary, genes provide the blueprint for brain development, but environmental influences shape it by determining which brain connections are strengthened and which are weakened. Safe and nurturing early relationships contribute to healthy development, while adverse childhood experiences like abuse and neglect can have lifelong consequences. We've focused a lot on substance use disorder and the addiction, but as far as the prevention, it's kind of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. What comes first, the trauma or addiction? And sometimes I feel like, I see this real connection to it, and I've experienced that in my own life to a great degree. And how do we get to a child before this becomes a lifelong, fight? How do we get there? Hopefully, like programs like Strengthening Families locally and learning about it more, we can start there. So where did this all come about? Where did the ACE study come about? So Kaiser Permanente did a study. They conducted extensive research to shed light on the specific health consequences of ACEs and their far-reaching effects on individuals throughout their lives. It was the largest study of its kind to examine the health, social, and economic effects of ACEs over the lifespan. They had over 17,000 participants and examined past history of abuse, family dysfunction, and current health status of mostly elderly adults. And what they found was pretty significant. They found that the most important thing that they concluded was, as the number of ACEs increase, so does the risk of negative health outcomes. This was groundbreaking, and it became evident that a child growing up in an environment marked by abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction is essentially immersed in what can be described as a toxic culture. So to illustrate this concept of a toxic culture, I'm going to use this example by a world-renowned Dr. Gabor Mate. I'm sure I'm slaughtering that name. Dr. Mate employs an analogy involving a petri dish to help us grasp the essence of the current societal environment. When we study microorganisms in the laboratory, we cultivate them in a nourishing broth, referred to as a culture medium. If the organism in this culture medium are dying off, not thriving, or falling ill in significant numbers, we label it as a toxic culture. Similarly, when we observe increasing rates of sickness, addiction, mental illness, self-harm, and overdoses in a community, it becomes representative of a toxic culture, one that does not support human growth. So, let's see what I can do here. So this type of culture can have a permanent impact on the developing brain. It leads to changes in the structure and function that impact cognitive, emotional, and behavioral regulation. This can lead to difficulties with attention, memory, learning, and self-regulation. The impact of this trauma can be felt many years later. There is a there is a traumatic imprint. And when it acts up as the rational part of the brain goes offline. Because of this, the irrational brain and its traumatic imprint takes over. And injured people react to the trauma in response in different ways. I'm so sorry. I said this hits a little close to home. I'm just going to stop for a second because I'm feeling like I'm dissociating just a little. But I grew up in a very traumatic home environment. And I always had this dream. What kept me going was, I'm going to get older and I'm going to get out, right? And I'm going to go on and I'm going to make something of myself and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. But when I got to the other side of that, I realized that, first of all, I had disassociated so much from my previous life that I didn't have a lot of memories. And my current memory just not all the way there. And I feel like part of that is because maybe some of my cognitive function ended there. So I've fought really hard to do something, to be someone. And that's why this is so close to me, is because I understand it. I feel like this is my story. So I apologize for going off topic. I'm gonna bring it back in. So ACEs can also lead to difficulty with emotional regulation. I wouldn't know anything about that. Making it harder for children and adults to regulate their emotion and respond to stress in healthy ways. This can lead to problems with anxiety, depression, and mental health challenges. And additionally, research shows that the effects of ACEs can be cumulative, meaning that the more ACEs a person experiences, the greater the impact on their health and well-being. This is just saying it again. For example, people who have experienced 4 or more ACEs are at a higher risk for a range of negative outcomes, including chronic health conditions, mental health problems, substance use disorder, and even premature death. And when children experience trauma, it can disrupt their sense of safety and security and activate their body's stress response system. Over time, this chronic activation of stress response can lead to a range of negative physical, emotional, and cognitive outcomes, including impaired brain development, poor academic achievement, and increased risk of chronic health problems. So toxic stress can also be passed down from generation to generation, just like the video said. And I think I've been learning a lot about seed germination and saving seeds from one year to the next. And in the toxic climate soil of St. George, Utah, they suggest that you get your seeds and you put them in the soil and you grow them 1 year and you save and harvest those seeds because they're going to work better in that soil, right? They change from season to season. And ideally, you would collect the seeds, and over time, they would grow in the soils that you needed. And I feel like this is kind of similar. It changes your DNA, it changes your cognitive abilities to function, and it doesn't just change your DNA, right? As a female, you're going to pass that DNA on to other people, and it's kind of the same thing. Does it have a combination effect as it goes from generation to generation? It's scary that they think that might actually be happening. So when parents or caregivers experience ACEs themselves, it can affect their ability to provide safe, stable, and a nurturing environment for their own children, and can contribute to a cycle of trauma and adversity that can be difficult to break. For example, parents who have experienced abuse or neglect themselves may struggle to form healthy relationships with their children, or they may have difficulty regulating their own emotions and behavior, which can contribute to a stressful home environment. I don't know, I may have lost my place here. So toxic stress can disrupt organ tissue, brain development, and then some of the things that we talked about, these consequences may follow a person into adulthood, and that's what they found with the Kaiser Permanente study. In addition, ACEs can impact the way that genes are expressed and lead to epigenetic changes that can be passed down again from generation to generation. ACEs can be felt not just by the individual who experienced them, but also by their children and grandchildren. I think that's so profound. So how is rural Utah doing in comparison to the national average? Sadly, not well. Children in rural areas are often at an increased risk for exposure to ACEs and other forms of childhood trauma. This can include exposure to poverty, poor living conditions, and limited access to healthcare and social services. Additionally, rural communities may have limited resources for addressing and preventing children or childhood trauma, which can contribute to the higher ACE scores. So let's kind of take a look. I don't know if you'll be able to see this diagram, but I think it's pretty interesting here. The national average is significantly lower than the ACE score of rural Utah, which is 4.79. So here's Utah at 4.79, and the national average is 1.59. And then look at the rates. 4% of rural Utah adolescents reported greater than 7 ACE scores, or ACEs. That's a pretty significant chunk, I would say anyway. So rural Utah adolescents are more likely to experience multiple ACEs than the national average. This could be due to the poverty levels in rural counties. I think they're just conjecturing there, but these findings highlight the need for targeted interventions to address the impact of ACEs in rural Utah. So here's how it lines up. And I had a slide that compared that, but I think I compared it to the national average. But 36.9% suffered emotional abuse, 23% household substance abuse, 22% household mental illness, 23% parent separation or divorce, 19% physical abuse, and then it just kind of goes on, 13.1% sexual abuse. So those are pretty high numbers, and these were the most common ACE experienced by adults in Utah. I want to just move on from that. So then we came along, and the things that can kind of offset the ACEs are what they call the PACEs, right? So these are kind of the ability to really connect with people, and how many of you, and you can kind of take a score here so you can add these to compare your ACEs to your PACEs, right? So did you feel able to talk to your family about feelings? If so, give yourself a point. Do you feel your family stood by you during difficult times? Do you enjoy participating in community traditions? Do you feel a sense of belonging in high school? Feel supported by friends? Have at least 2 non-parent adults who took genuine interest in you, and feel safe and protected by an adult in your home? Wow. So I'll give you an example. My score, my ACE score is 7, and my PACE score is a 0. So I feel like mine was pretty heavily weighted, and hence the just get through it, right? You know, who do you talk to? Who do you trust? If you can just get through it, you can make it. The problem is on the other side of that, there's not a lot of support either. You know, all of a sudden life hits you and you have to survive, and you just kind of do the best that you can do. And that looks different for everybody, I think. So let's see what some of the let's go a little bit more into the 5 protective factors. So then there's the 5 protective factors that we can help, maybe, that will promote positive childhood experiences. If they're not getting them at home, then maybe there's ways that we can promote it. So, and maybe help mitigate the negative effects of ACEs and promote resilience in these children. So parental resilience is one, can we teach the parents to have more resilience? Can we give them skills that they need so they're better equipped to provide a stable and supportive environment? Social and emotional competence of children. When children are able to regulate their emotions, form positive relationships, and develop problem-solving skills, they are better equipped to cope with challenges they may face as a result. Social connections. I think we could all do better at social connections and having positive belonging and support that can help buffer the effects of ACEs. These relationships can also provide access to resources and support the family's needs, and meet their needs. Then there's concrete support in time of need, increasing the knowledge to parents of child development, and so that they're better able to provide their children with support and guidance and maybe be a little bit emotionally more available. So a quick disclaimer, I feel like all is not lost before we go into these. There is a way out to the other side. Even if you had high scores, I feel like it might be some reasoning behind it, but it's, we kind of always have to rise above the best that we can, the best that we're able, and give ourselves a little bit of grace, which is what I'm trying to do right now. So here's a graphic really quick, and children are resilient, but they shouldn't have to be as resilient as they are. So okay, we can offer supportive care and help balance this scale. In this balancing act, we have this person has a couple, like 3 negative experiences, but look at all the positive supports. Sometimes I feel like Utah's pretty good at positive supports, but I could be wrong, but I think we kind of maybe bind together as a community in a lot of different ways. So this person is going to, there's kind of a line right here. They're kind of balancing, they're doing all right, and they're maybe not gonna have some of the negative impacts that other people are. Positive experiences can help buffer the negative effects and promote resilience. For example, a supportive caregiver, a safe and stable home environment, or access to educational and extracurricular opportunities can provide a sense of security and stability that can help a child overcome the challenges they may face as a result of the ACEs. So then let's move to this one, where the negative experiences outweigh the positive supports. When negative ACEs outweigh positive PACEs, a child's ability to develop resilience may be significantly compromised. The effects of ACEs can accumulate over time, leading to chronic stress and trauma that can have long-lasting effects on a child's physical and mental health, as well as their ability to form healthy relationships and regulate their emotions. This can lead to negative outcomes such as depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and other health behavioral problems. So without sufficient positive experiences and relationships, children may struggle to develop coping skills. And guess what? Most children become adults. So it doesn't change when they get to the adults. In fact, it might show up just in different ways. Without sufficient positive experiences and relationships, children may struggle to develop coping skills and the ability to overcome adversity, making it difficult to build resilience. Additionally, the absence of positive experiences may leave a child feeling isolated, unsupported, and unsafe, which can further exacerbate the negative effects of ACEs. I might have messed up on the slides there. If I did, I apologize. But here's what it really comes down to. The impact of an ACE can persist long after the initial traumatic event has passed, morphing into a variety of negative health outcomes, in addition to various mental and physical health ailments. And an ACE can also lead to addiction in adulthood. Individuals who have experienced some form of childhood trauma have shown an increased tendency to abuse drugs and alcohol. Higher ACE scores were linked to an increase in smoking, as there was a 250% increase in an individual with an ACE score of 6 or more, compared with a person with an ACE score of 0. The same was true for chronic alcohol abuse. There was a 500% increase in adult alcoholism with an ACE score of 4 or more, compared with a score of 0. Shockingly, one of the highest increases, it's not wrong, I checked that bottom statistic out. I actually I ran across this slide and I found it on the NIH website, and it is actually a male child with an ACE score of 6 or higher has a 4,600% increase in the likelihood of using IV drugs compared to someone with a score of 0. So I told you I was going to finish early, and I think I maybe am, but to wrap it up, there we are. There is a clear link between high ACE scores and an increased risk of substance use disorder. Another thing I don't see that I left in the slides was they're actually more likely to die 10 years earlier than someone with a low ACE score. So I wanted to mention that. But it's important to recognize the impact of ACEs and to address them through prevention and intervention efforts that promote positive childhood experiences and protect children from the negative impact of trauma and adversity. We need to be out there. We need to find these children. They are out there. They are suffering. They need us. And if we can prevent, then we don't have to treat. Effective treatment and support for individuals with substance use disorder can help them to overcome the challenges they face and achieve recovery and improved quality of life. Okay, one more quick thing. Maybe you've already seen this on Facebook if you're a big Facebook geek like me, but I wanted to show this because it really touched me. So hopefully it works for you. Hopefully we can get it working. I have the amazing Chris at my side.
Tech support.
I know, I need him to come with me. Okay, you don't have to make it bigger. Oh, there we go. Oh, he's brilliant. Okay. So thank you for letting me do this for you guys and give you a little bit of insight into why I'm so passionate about what it is that I do. And I hope we can find more kindness and more compassion to give everybody because we're all at different places. So thank you.